There are people who can spend 4 hours at a loud party and drive home feeling completely fine. And then there's you. 20 minutes. That's all it takes before your brain feels like it's on fire. Not tired, not shy. On fire. Every overlapping conversation, every burst of laughter, every flickering light. Your brain is processing all of it at once, at full volume, with no filter. While everyone else is just having a good time, you're managing an internal storm nobody can see. You step outside for air, and when someone asks why you left early, you say you weren't feeling well. But the real answer? You were feeling too much. If that just hit you like something you already knew, stay with me, because what you've been living with your entire life has a name, and that name is going to change the way you see yourself. What you are. You're not shy. You're not fragile. You're not too much. You're a highly sensitive person, and that's not a character flaw. It's a neurological configuration. Psychologist Elaine Aron identified that 15 to 20% of the population has a nervous system that processes stimulation at an unusually high intensity. It's called sensory processing sensitivity. In practical terms, where most brains automatically filter out 90% of incoming information, yours lets everything through. Sounds, lights, emotions, tension in a room, the things people leave unsaid. You're not overreacting, you're absorbing more. That's not a bug. It's a different kind of architecture. And like any architecture, it has both its strengths and its vulnerabilities. The childhood you recognize. You were the kid who cried at movies when everyone else sat still. The one who could sense the teacher's mood before she'd said a word. The one driven crazy by clothing tags, exhausted by birthday parties, needing time to ease into a situation while others jumped straight in. And you were told, stop overreacting. Stop being so sensitive. Toughen up. You heard those words so many times that you started to believe them. You built armor over your sensitivity. You forced yourself to function in environments that cost you enormously. You learned to perform normalcy. But the sensitivity never went away. You can't switch off your nervous system. You can only learn to ignore its signals, to pretend it isn't screaming. The exhaustion cycle. Here's what an ordinary day actually looks like for you. You wake up and your brain is already running. The light coming through the window, the sounds from outside, the texture of the sheets. Before you've even checked your phone, you've already done more cognitive processing than most people will do by mid-morning. At work, every interaction costs you something, not because you're antisocial, because you're genuinely present. You pick up on the shift in energy across the room. You hear what's left unsaid. You feel someone else's exhaustion as if it were your own. By mid-afternoon, your battery is running low. But the stimulation keeps coming, so you push through. You hold it together. And when you finally get home, what you feel isn't tiredness. It's a system crash. You need total silence, darkness, time to process everything you've absorbed throughout the day. People call this antisocial, dramatic, difficult. It's recovery, plain and simple, emotional absorption. Here's something that might sound strange to hear, but will feel immediately true. You absorb other people's emotions into your own body. Someone walks into the room carrying anxiety, and within seconds, that anxiety is sitting in your chest. You don't know why. It wasn't there before. But now it feels almost like yours. You watch a movie, and you don't just observe it. You move through it. A character's humiliation becomes your humiliation. Their grief becomes your grief. In a crowd, you're not just picking up on noise. You're picking up on the emotional states of dozens of people simultaneously. Their hidden tension, their excitement, their low-grade sadness. All of it, without trying, without being able to stop. That's why crowded spaces drain you at a level others simply don't understand. The problem isn't the noise. It's everything the noise is carrying. The mind that never stops. You can't just let a conversation pass. You analyze it. You replay what you said. What you should have said, how they reacted, what that one extra second of silence might have meant. Someone says, we should hang out sometime, with a casual smile. And for 3 days, you wonder whether they meant it or were just being polite. People tell you to stop overthinking, to let things go. But your brain isn't wired for the surface. It searches for patterns. It detects what's unspoken. It reads between the lines on instinct, not choice. What makes you exhausting to live inside sometimes is the exact same thing that makes you extraordinarily perceptive. You catch lies everyone else misses. You sense a dynamic shifting before it blows up. You understand people at depths they haven't explored in themselves yet. The real work is learning to tell the difference between signals that deserve your attention and the ones that are just mental noise, a world not built for you. Let's be clear, sensitivity isn't the problem. The problem is a world calibrated for the other 80%. Schools reward kids who can sit still in overstimulating classrooms for hours on end. Companies value people who perform in open-plan offices with constant noise and interruption. Social success goes to those who can stack social events back-to-back without needing recovery time. The entire system was designed for a different neurology. And if you don't fit that mold, you're told you're the one with the issue. But put yourself in a different context. In a pre-modern community, highly sensitive people were indispensable. They detected danger before anyone else. They sensed tension within the group. They perceived subtle shifts in the environment that nobody else noticed. Sensitivity isn't a modern weakness. It's an ancient survival mechanism that the contemporary world has simply forgotten to value. The shadow side of sensitivity. But let's be honest about what's hard. When you feel everything intensely, pain arrives at full force too. Rejection doesn't sting, it burns. Criticism doesn't just bother you, it loops in your head for weeks. Failure doesn't feel like a lesson. It feels like confirmation of what you always feared. Highly sensitive people are more vulnerable to anxiety and depression, not because sensitivity causes them, but because absorbing the world without filters or boundaries, day after day, eventually becomes too heavy to carry. Some develop avoidance patterns or ways to numb out. Screens, food, isolation, anything that temporarily turns the volume down. That's the trap. Sensitivity without boundaries becomes suffering, and many highly sensitive people never learn where they end and the world begins. That's where the real work starts. The boundaries you have every right to set. You need boundaries other people don't need, and that's completely legitimate. Leaving a party early, declining plans when you're running on empty, working in quieter environments, having alone time that isn't up for negotiation. Being around people who understand that how much you can give right now isn't a measure of how much you care. You've learned to feel ashamed of those needs. You've been made to believe that expressing them makes you difficult, high maintenance, antisocial. But here's what's actually true. A boundary isn't a demand. It's what keeps you intact. A highly sensitive person without boundaries is a person in a state of constant overload. And someone in permanent overload can't be truly present for others or for themselves. The most creative, connected, fully alive version of you lives on the other side of boundaries you haven't dared to set yet. What sensitivity gives you? Everything I've described can sound like a burden, and sometimes it is. But sensitivity also gives you access to something most people never reach. A sunset doesn't just look nice to you. It moves something inside you. Music doesn't just sound good. It reaches places words can't touch. A piece of art doesn't just interest you. It speaks to you in a language you can't always translate but understand deeply. You love with an intensity many people don't even know is possible. You remember small things someone mentioned once because you were actually listening. You sense what someone needs before they put it into words. You create emotional safety for people who've never felt it before. In a world of surface-level connections and lives lived on autopilot, you have access to something rare: depth, real presence, meaning. The same wiring that overloads you is the wiring that makes you exceptional. The reframe. You've spent your whole life believing that your sensitivity was what was wrong with you. What if it's exactly what's right? The problem was never that you felt too much. It's that no one ever gave you the tools to carry what you felt. You were handed an extraordinarily precise instrument with no instruction manual. Every breakdown, every time you wondered why you couldn't just be normal, that was your system trying to process a world that wasn't designed for the way you work. But you're not broken. You're not weak. You're not too much. You're a highly sensitive person, which means you move through life at a depth most people will never access. The work isn't to become less sensitive. It's to build a life that honors your sensitivity instead of fighting it. The right environment, the right boundaries, The right people. The ones who understand that your depth isn't a burden, but something rare they're lucky to be close to. You don't need to toughen up. You need to finally recognize yourself for what you are. And what you are is rare. So learn to play your own melody. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos. See you soon.